Hello there, I'm Pete Snodden. Welcome to The Journey. I'm really excited to share this person's journey with you this time around. He's a guy from my hometown in Bangor, County Down, Northern Ireland, and at the tender age of just 41, has got to the pinnacle of world football. Yes, he is the director of the medical department at FIFA, which is the world governing body for the beautiful game. He became a physio. Well, he originally was a footballer, became a physio, retrained the game, became a doctor. During his time as a doctor, he was the physio at the Belfast Giants, which is an elite league ice hockey team. Then ended up in the Northern Ireland national team before getting a job at Liverpool Football Club, where he is working with the top professionals in the Premier League. He goes on a journey with them as part of their backroom team to winning the European Cup under the management of Jurgen Klopp. I mean, this guy has got so much to tell, some great stories and anecdotes along the way. And from his journey, I sense passion, commitment. I sense a bit of an ego. He talks openly about that himself. And whether that got him anywhere or whether that held him back. And now he's got this brand new role at FIFA and he's only 41. It's an incredible journey. I really hope you enjoy it. This is the journey of Andy Massey.
The Journey with Pete Snodden.
Andy Massey, great to see you. You're in FIFA's headquarters there in Zurich, and I'm really excited for our chat, so I appreciate your time.
No problems. I've got to be honest, I've just rearranged my desk so that you can look out the window at all the flags in the pitch to make me look as if I'm more important than I actually am.
You know what? This is low budget, man. Well, we can hardly see the flags out there, for goodness sake. But anyway.
That's okay. I got... The first thing I did was actually go out and find where the Northern Ireland one was so I could take a photograph and send all my mates back home.
Listen, first up, congratulations on your new job. For those listening and watching right now, give us the exact title.
Medical director. So medical director at FIFA.
Okay, so is this the ultimate job in your profession?
I don't know. For me, yes, but ask my wife and she would think of no worse job to do. So it depends. It depends what you want to do. I don't think there are many other places where I can go where I'll be saying that it's maybe not as high profile. It's probably as high a profile as you could get, but whether it's the best, I'm still not sure yet.
Okay, you're early doors there. You've only been there a couple of months, and we, on this podcast, we talk about people's journey, and you've had an unbelievable journey to get to where you are, and you're from Bangor, just like me, in Northern Ireland. And I do believe that people from our part of the world, for such a small population, we do tend to get some big jobs, and people are, we punch above our weight in terms of the size of population and what, our people go on to do. So you are at the top of your profession working at FIFA. But your journey, I mean, you started off growing up in Bangor just being a footballer, just playing football?
Yeah. I don't know. Probably started off the same sort of life as anybody else, really. I think maybe looking back a little bit privileged to be at Bangor, but we didn't have like a privileged lifestyle as such. My dad worked, my mum didn't because she looked after the kids. So it was just like almost like a normal lifestyle. It was just, I suppose, looking back, I was quite fortunate that my mum and dad were both sporty, and that's sort of what developed, I don't know, an interest or a sort of a pull to get into the sports side of things.
So doing medicine, was that always in the remit, or was the remit one to be a professional footballer?
No, the remit was always to be a professional footballer right from the very start. It's as I say, mum and dad were both swimmers, but I'm like a rock. I sink. I just don't have. I can't. I ran a marathon with one day's training, so going out and running isn't the problem. I can do that. It's slow, but ask me to swim 25 meters. I can't do it without stopping to catch my breath. So I was like the ultimate disappointment for a mum and dad who were both swimmers. But I suppose what they did sort of have then was that sort of outdoorsy type sporty lifestyle. So it wasn't extravagant or anything like that, but we'd go walk the dog twice a day, and whenever you were walking the dog, my dad would bring a football with us and we'd kick the football about. Or it didn't even have to be a football, like a rugby ball, anything at all. It was just more that sort of instilling in us that the physical activity side of things, get us outside, get us moving, that sort of thing. And I guess, from then I preferred football to lots of other sports, but I played all the sports whenever I was growing up. It was just so happened that I was lucky enough to be a little bit better at football than any of the others.
You played at Bangor, you played at Linfield. Were you getting to where you wanted to get to on the football pitch, or was it not going the way you'd hoped?
Do you know what? It sort of reminds me of every time I talk about, I don't profess to have had a football career, but whenever I'm talking to, say, my kids, because they've never seen me play football, whenever I'm talking to them, I always used to say, the older you get, the wiser you get. And this really is indicative of my sort of career in football. Whenever I was younger, I probably thought I was a hell of a lot better than what I actually was. Now, I had the luxury of having an older brother, so he was a couple of years above me. So whenever I started playing football, I was always having to play in his team because my dad could only go and watch one team play. So I sort of learned how to, the physical attributes to play a couple of years above yourself. And I'm quite a big fella anyway, so I could always do that. So my football skills were based around sort of A, the fitness, and B, my size. Get me to sprint and I was terrible, or get me to try and pass a ball and I was terrible. But in hindsight, looking back, those sort of attributes suited the Irish League at that stage, suited the Irish League perfectly. So I'd sort of started at Bangor quite young. And I guess breaking into the first team, I think maybe I was about 17. I had one really good season at Bangor before I started getting the ego about myself and thinking, I can do it. It actually coincided with Bangor had quite a few different managers at the time. And one of the managers who came in then didn't rate me. Football's a matter of opinions. So he said I could go. And Linfield, Coleraine, a couple of teams sort of asked would I sign for them, but I ended up at Linfield. So that's sort of how I took the step to Linfield. I was maybe good enough to go there, but they already had Noel Bailey playing, so he played like 27,000 matches for Linfield. So in hindsight, I was never going to displace him. But they'd also signed Winky Murphy about a year before, and at the time I thought, no, I can compete with Winky for a place. But I got to Linfield and actually ended up getting an injury after about a month, 2 months, and never played again that whole season. So I tell people I didn't make it at Linfield because I got injured, but really they had two proper centre halves there, and I would have had my work cut out to displace either of them.
Were you devastated with that injury?
Sort of best thing ever happened to me, really, because at that stage the condition that I had, everyone was saying, it's going to take about a year to rehab this, and I'm thinking to myself, nah, I wasn't a brain box at school, but I also wasn't stupid either. I'm thinking nothing takes a year to rehab, but I know a hell of a lot more than these people who are telling me that it's going to take a year. So that's actually what pushed me into studying physiotherapy in the first place. So without that injury, I probably wouldn't have got to where I got to now.
I want to get onto the physio bit in a second, but you've mentioned the word ego a few times right now. And you have said that as you've got older, perhaps you've got wiser. How much do you reckon that ego pushed you on to try and get to where you've got now?
No, I think probably it held me back a little bit. As I say, I've got this motto in football now that it's pointless falling out with people, especially in something like football, which is a game of opinions. So, one manager might think you're pretty good, the other manager might think you're not so good. And whenever I was younger, I'd fall out with the ones who didn't think it was any good because I sort of had that ego. So it sort of held me back. I left Bangor way too soon. I should have stayed there longer. I perhaps left Linfield way too soon. I should have stayed there. I then went on to Ards, left them too soon because I got dropped from the team and wanted to move on. So I think it probably held me back. What sort of forced me going forwards and probably in my medical career was not so much the ego. I've learned to temper that. And I would actually say now, I hope I've got no ego at all, because I hate seeing that in people who work sort of on the outskirts of football. Seeing anybody with an ego, it grates at me. But it's more the determination then to prove people wrong. So all those managers who said I was no good at football, I was like, well, no, I'll be determined to show you wrong. Or, the people who said, you maybe weren't clever enough at school, I'll show you how wrong you could be with that. So yeah, it's more the determination. I hope I haven't got an ego now.
So physiotherapy was it. Talk us through your university career and then what happened next.
Well, say got the injury at Linfield, and then started studying physio, which was 4 years at Jordanstown. So I had the 1 year where I was sort of injured, so the doctors and physios were ready to take about a year to rehab that injury. At that stage, I'd sort of left Linfield, but was still playing in the Irish League. So I had a couple of years at Ards, which were brilliant, and combined that with my studies. So whereas other people either going to university needed a part-time job, I had the football to rely on. I never earned a lot of money, but it was enough to stop me ever having to get a part-time job. And likewise, whenever I was studying, then I had a distraction with the football as well. So did the 4 years, but on my last year at Jordanstown, we could go off and do an elective. And I was focused on working in sport, whereas, physio was much more broadly encompassing. You've got like respiratory physios, you've got neurology physios, all different aspects based sort of within the National Health Service. And I could think of nothing worse than working in a National Health Service. I just wanted to do, work in football or work in rugby or work with some sort of sport. So the last year at university, you had the chance to do an elective where you could go away and sort of pick up skills from, wherever you wanted to work. And I'd applied to all 92 of the professional teams in England. Could I come and do my elective? And I think out of the 92, 89 didn't reply. One said yes, we could take it. Two said no, we couldn't take it. So the one that said they would take me were Bristol City or Bristol Rovers, I can't remember. And my ego came into it. I was like, I don't want to go to Bristol City, no way. I'm going to spend 6 weeks somewhere a little bit more exotic than that. So applied to the Australian Institute of Sport, and they had a completely different outlook in so much as, they love teaching. So they were like, yeah, come on in. So did my elective over in Australia, met, as it turns out, one of the best physios, or one of the most world-renowned physios and best, and had a contact with her. And pretty much lots of my other jobs since then have come through this girl that I did my elective with. So came back, finished physio, thought, I'm going to go out to Australia. I love this. Headed back out to Australia then, got on a master's course out there. And I was rehabbing a swimmer. And I remember a doctor saying to me, the rehab that I'd planned was wrong. And I'm like, no, it's not wrong. I know what I'm doing here. He's like, no, it's wrong. I want you to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, no. Seriously, let's do it my way. And then if it doesn't work, then we can go. And he was like, no, listen, I'm the doctor. You're the physio. We do it my way. And the sort of, I don't know whether the ego came in then or the determination came in then. I was like, no, I'll prove you wrong. So straight away went home and applied to do medicine so that I could go back to him in what I thought would have been like 4 or 5 years' time and say, well, I'm a doctor now and what I say is right. So, ended up then coming back to Northern Ireland. I'd applied to Queen's in Belfast to do medicine, got my place, and ended up coming back to Northern Ireland then.
Do you know what? The thing, whether you say it's ego or whether it's not, for me, the thing that you've got bucket loads of is just determination. It's that thing, I will prove you wrong. And so far in this story, you've did just that, so far.
A little bit, but the determination more comes from the lack of ability. So I've got to try and make up for it some way, because that's what I'm saying. I wasn't clever at school at all, and I certainly wasn't, looking back now, I certainly wasn't a good enough footballer to be a pro, but I could train as hard as anybody, or I could maybe study as hard as anybody.
You went to do medicine. How difficult was that?
It wasn't that bad, because I was still playing football a little bit on the side, and I was working as a physio on the side as well. So the difficulty was actually trying to juggle all of those together and get them all fitted into a day, and still doing like a full-time medical degree as such. So I could sort of pick and choose which lectures I didn't really need to go to. And I was a little bit older than everybody else. So, it wasn't a case of going in and going to every single lecture. I could, decide on a Tuesday, well, actually, I won't go to the lectures on, say, epidemiology on a Tuesday. I'll maybe try and book people into the private clinic, or I'll be training on a Tuesday evening for football. So, plenty of people juggle 2-3 jobs. They have to do that to survive. I was just lucky that my football could pay a little bit, physio paid an awful lot working privately, and then I could sort of tag in the medicine on the side.
Was it difficult being the older person in the class?
A little, yeah. I mean, I'm not. Yeah, I don't know if it would have been any more difficult. Because I'd sort of been through it all. I knew, I didn't need to go out partying every night. I was still pretty committed to training for football. I'm trying to think who I was even playing for whenever I was that. I think maybe at Ards in Ballyclare. So I was still playing at a reasonable level. So I had to still be a little bit committed, but not overly difficult. I would say probably kids coming out from school who actually hadn't any sort of, I sound like an old person, but any sort of life experience, maybe find it more difficult and find the party life and go straight into it.
So you got the medicine, your medical degree, okay, and then you have the physiotherapy. So how with doing both, obviously it made you a roundery individual in terms of your decision making. Looking at it now and where you've got to, was it definitely the right decision to do that second degree?
Yeah, 100%. 100% in so much as it made me do all my work as a doctor. Now, don't get me wrong, the first maybe 5 years of working as a doctor, the physio degree had no use at all. So I'd be working junior doctor shifts, junior doctor hours, and still trying to hold on to, I was working at the Giants at the time, still trying to hold on to my Giants job as a physio. So that was difficult on top of it, the hours that everyone says you need to work at as a doctor. What I've found out since then is certainly working in sport, lots of the stuff that the physios do, they're better than doctors, So say joint examinations or planning rehab, physios are better than doctors. So it's sort of helped me in the long run. At the start, didn't really help at all. You're not going to walk onto a cardiology ward and tell one of the patients you just had a heart attack, hold on a minute while I assess your knee. So difficult from that point of view.
How did you, whenever you're a junior doctor, the hours that you have to put in are just incredible. So you were doing that on the NHS and you were still doing your physiotherapy working for Belfast Giants. How did you make that work? To me, an outsider looking in, there doesn't seem to be enough hours in a day for that.
Yeah, to be honest, there probably weren't enough hours in the day. I was lucky in the way that I worked at the Giants. They were quite adaptable. So whenever I was doing the physio there, it was covering matches and then sort of treatments and rehabs during the week. But a lot of the times you could talk to the players, and if we're doing a rehab and we were going to the gym, we could do it in the evenings. They'd probably, some of them would have preferred to do the rehabs in the evening because they'd have the day with their families. And so sort of a little bit of compromise, but it worked a little bit. At the time, it was a means to an end. I knew I couldn't do it for 10, 15 years. It was just, to get me to get a bit of a reputation as working as a physio or working in elite sport, because there weren't, I don't even like the term elite sport, but working in professional sport, because there weren't that many opportunities in Northern Ireland to work in professional sport.
And whenever you became a doctor and you were doing the physiotherapy, obviously you obviously still wanted to do sport, and sport was where it was at for you. But whenever you narrow it down into just the sporting field, as you say, you get less and less and less and less opportunities. Did that not scare you?
A little bit, but that's sort of why I held on to the physio side of things, because ever since I started medicine, I've always said I still want to be a physio. Physio's where the enjoyment is. Getting out onto a football pitch and doing the rehabs, that's where the enjoyment is. Sitting in an office and prescribing medication is boring as hell. So I'd always wanted to keep the physio side of things, and sports medicine actually at that stage was just becoming a specialty in the UK. They were tagging onto the back of the 2012 Olympics. So before then, there were no official sports doctors. And I think in about 2007, 2008, it became an official specialty within the UK. And I was thinking, oh, brilliant. I hope I've got a bit of a head start here. As it turns out, it didn't make a blind bit of difference. But now, if you ask me to do a rehab plan, I can do it, because that's sort of what I've been used to be doing the whole time.
How much in terms of injuries and whatnot, how much do they differ between sports? So if we're looking at ice hockey, to say football, to say Gaelic games, the rugby, I mean, is an injury just an injury, or does it differ very much between the sports?
An injury is an injury, but they do differ. So you get different types of injuries to begin with. So the types of injuries you would have got in ice hockey are completely different to the types of injuries you get in football. But having said that, if you get a groin strain, groin strains are probably the ones that are most prevalent in both sports. you're still going to rehab it the same way. But whenever you're rehabbing it for an ice hockey player, you're rehabbing it for them to do 90 seconds, 120-second shifts before they're able to relax again. So, what we call anaerobic type stuff. Whereas with a footballer, you're trying to get him 90 minutes through it before he's allowed a rest again as such. And probably the best example I would have of that is whenever I started as a physio and I was out in Australia, and I got a phone call from the river dance were touring. So the guys that were working with knew that I was Irish, and they were like, "Oh, we know just the person that will help you." So they said, "Could you help this tour of river dance?" They were going around Australia and Southeast Asia. I'm like, "Yeah, sure, not a problem." Never seen any Irish, obviously never done any Irish dancing in my life. I've got 2 left feet. But the types of injuries that those guys and girls were getting were so specific to Irish dancing, so specific to dancing, and actually so specific to dancing on stages that they weren't, used to dancing on. So you almost have to learn each sport, learn what the injuries are, and then learn how to rehab them to get them to a stage where they're not going to injure themselves again by doing exactly the same thing again. So yeah, the injuries do differ as much as you sort of like to think, well, an ankle injury is the same in no matter what sport. No, it's not. It's a little bit different if you're expecting someone to run 12 kilometers in a football match as opposed to, say, an Irish dancer who's wearing effectively high heels to parade about for 10 minutes, take a bit of a break, and then go back out. It's as much exertion, put it that way, as much physical activity, but different types of demands.
So you're at the Giants, and then a job comes up at the Northern Ireland team.
I think I probably had about 2 years, maybe 3 years with Nigel Worthington.
Oh, I didn't realize you were there for as long as that before Michael arrived.
Yeah. So I started, I think, about 2009, and I think Nigel probably left in 2011. I remember it was after Italy because it was one of my favorite trips. But it's one of those points where I hate this. I hate you getting jobs because of who you know. I think it should all go on ability. But I'll automatically hold my hands up here. I only got that Northern Ireland job because of who I knew. I'd played with quite a few of the guys who were in the Northern Ireland squad. They were looking for a doctor. I think Nigel had maybe said to a few of the senior players who were right about my age at that stage, any of the doctors in your clubs wanting to do it, and they were like, "No, but there is a guy in Northern Ireland." So Nigel invited me up and had learned an awful lot from Nigel. I think it was maybe about 2 years, like 2-3 years with Nigel before Michael came in.
All right, okay. And then obviously, Michael, you stayed on with Michael. Whenever managers change and you're in the role, do they come in then and go, "Here, hold on a wee second, I want you to do it my way"? Or what way does that work?
Yes and no. It depends on the type of manager. So from playing, I went through multitudes of managers, and then working with the ice hockey team, we changed the head coach there every 2 years. And with the international managers, yes, I suppose the best way of this is there's a doctor at Chelsea, the head doctor at Chelsea, big Spanish guy called Paco, lovely guy. But he tells the story, whenever anybody asks him, "Well, what do you do day to day?" He says, "Well, if the manager asks me to make a cappuccino, I make a cappuccino." And that's how he sums his role up as head of medicine at Chelsea. And he could not be more spot on. So if a new manager comes in and they want to change things, they change it. So, well, yeah, like say at Liverpool, I never actually officially reported into the manager, whether it be Brendan or Jurgen. I didn't report into them. I reported into the chief exec, and then as things changed, then into the sporting director. So I didn't really have to do what the manager said. But anybody who thinks that you don't do what the manager says in a football team, you're not going to last. So yes, you do. You adapt to what the manager wants. And I'm not saying that you change your practice as such, but the information you give him has to be exactly what he wants. And that's exemplified by the type of information we would have given Brendan at Liverpool compared to what we gave Jurgen. Completely different, completely different styles. I wouldn't say which one's better or which one's worse, just completely different. You just have to adapt to.
Yeah, well, whenever Michael took over the Northern Ireland rule, because now we can look back on Michael O'Neill's career with Northern Ireland, and obviously he's moved on now, but he had a phenomenal number of years. Could you see that from day one, whenever he came in, the impact that he was going to have? Because the start, he didn't have an easy start, and he changed loads of players, and the results weren't going particularly well, and then something clicked, and then it was all history after that.
I think this probably sums up like the problems with the game in general. You go over to England in the Premier League or the Championship, and you see these managers getting sacked after 4 months, 5 months, and they're not given enough time in the job. I think it's even worse with an international manager. You could see Michael coming in, and he wanted to do things a little bit. He had a different type of style to Nigel. Again, I wouldn't say one was better or one was worse. It was just different. Michael had obviously played more recently than Nigel, and had his own idea about, Michael, I guess, wanted to play a little bit more sort of possession type football. And I remember at the time thinking, no way, Northern Ireland can't play possession type football. It's wrong. And he was persisting and persisting. And I don't think we could buy a goal in the first 10 matches, or we didn't win a match. Or I say we, I didn't have anything to do with it. The team didn't win in the first 11 matches or something ridiculous like that. And you're like, oh, but in fairness to him, he persisted, and he's been shown that he was completely right then, because he's developed, this squad that went to a Euro Championships, should have gone to a World Cup, and potentially going to another Euros as well, which for Northern Ireland in the modern game is unbelievable.
So you had a good time, obviously, with the Northern Ireland team. You had a great time with the Giants, and then you decided to take a job. Well, I say you decided to take a job. You applied for a job at my team at Liverpool, right? And this for me is just an amazing ascent. So you took the job, but you were working in the academy, right? How does that job come about?
Do you know what? They advertised the job as an academy doctor, and not very many teams had academy doctors or full-time academy doctors at that stage. This was back in 2013. And I'd seen that advertised, and a recruitment firm had phoned me up and asked, would I be interested? I was like, yeah, but I also know that recruitment firms sort of like put together a package of maybe 30 people. They get paid to then present those 30 people to the club. So it's like, yeah, I don't particularly want to be one of those 30 people. If you think I'm going to get the job, then by all means I'll apply. But I'd sort of been used to the football mentality that you don't apply for jobs, you get asked to do them. So the recruitment firm went away and then came back about a month later and said, listen, really stick an application in. So I was like, okay, maybe they're trying to tell me something here. So anyway, put the application in and got invited for the interview. The interview was hilarious. I'll tell you a quick story about the interview. So it was in 3 stages. And the first stage was all psychology. You had to do a psychological profile. So obviously I had done my sort of research beforehand and known as an academy doctor, you've got to know, you've got to have empathy. You've got to almost like have a pastoral care over the kids. But you've also got these very, very good players. Like Raheem Sterling had just left the academy. We had a couple of, big hitters in the academy at that stage. So you don't want to like go into the psychological profile and say, oh, I'll put my arm on them. You also had to have a little bit of sternness. So I'm filling like this psychological profile, lying through my teeth. And just telling them exactly what I think they wanted to hear. And then I got called in, and we had the academy director, a guy called Frank McPartland at the time. Brilliant guy, proper old school. But he was there with the head of HR, who turned out to be like a really close friend of mine, a lady called Lisa. So they're sort of both interviewing me. And then Lisa gets up to make a cup of coffee. And I remember Frank, in typical old style football, says, right, enough of that rubbish. They'd asked me a question beforehand about what would I do if one of the younger players put something on Facebook or Twitter criticizing me. And of course, I went through the model answer of, I'd take him aside. I would talk about his ideas, talk about his concerns, talk about his expectations, try and help him to understand that. So anyway, Lisa, the head of HR, left, and Frank says, no, seriously, cut the crap. What would you really do? And I'm thinking, okay, maybe every other doctor who's applied for this job is like a proper doctor and are quite posh and like the model answers. I thought I've got to go one of 2 ways here. Either I go and stick to my guns with the model answer, or I say, well, I've sort of been about football. I'd take the player and hit him a slap. So I went for the slap side of things, outside of the earshot of the HR girl, and Frank's like, yeah, you'll do me. So I ended up getting the job. All right,
So you arrive at Liverpool. Going to a Premier League club, albeit you're in the academy. Were you nervous?
A little bit. I was hoping that the job wouldn't really change, because we had big name players in the international team. I guess I wasn't nervous about going into that environment. I was more nervous about people not really taking to me, and then having to come back to Northern Ireland a bit of a failure as such, because I'd given up the Northern Ireland job. And I remember the phone call to Michael, and he was like, yeah, well, listen, see how it goes. Give us a shout back if if you want to get back involved with the international team. I thought, God, even if it didn't go well, that's not a phone call that I would make, because I'd feel disappointed in myself. So I guess no, I don't really get that nervous. I just want things to go right, and as I say, asking my missus to give up her job, pretty much give up her career to come over to England for a new start. I actually don't think I was nervous until my very, very first match for the Liverpool first team, after I'd been at the academy maybe for about a year and a half before I got brought up to the first team. That was only when, I guess,
you've been there a year. That just goes to show how quickly you went from being in the academy to being in the first team, or working with the first team, Premier League games, Champions League, at the pinnacle of European world football. And you're there in a year and a half. How did you do that so quickly? What happened?
Not that much actually happened again. I think it was just through circumstance more than anything else. My predecessor, so the head of medical before me, then left Liverpool. They had a gap to fill, and they'd asked, could I do it on a temporary basis? So I said, yeah, not a problem. So about 4 months into, I think that was January, coming towards the end of the season, then so about 4 months into it, I got a phone call from one of the other Premier League doctors to say to me, listen, just want to know what sort of questions do you think they're going to ask tomorrow? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He says, the interview for the Liverpool first team job, what do you think they're going to ask? I'm like, are they interviewing for this job that I'm doing, on a temporary basis? He was like, yeah, do you not know? And I'm like, no. So I phoned up the chief exec. Chief exec was a guy called Ian Eyre, top lad, but I was fuming mad that they didn't even consider me. So in fairness, Ian said to me, listen, we are considering you, but just because you're doing the job on a temporary basis doesn't mean you're the best person for that job. He says, we want to interview other people. If we think there are other people better than you, they're going to get the job. You've got to expect this. This is the best person gets the job. And he said, if it comes to it and we need to interview you against somebody else, we'll do that as well. Don't think you're entitled to this. And I was like, oh, okay. So hung the phone up and I was like, oh, my career is shot to pieces here. I'm going to look so bad. But anyway, he phoned me about a week later and says, right, we want you to do the job. And I'm like, okay, I don't know whether to thank you or not, because you put me through a week of hell. And he says, no, in maybe 2-3 years' time, you'll end up thanking me then. I was like, why? And he said, because you know that this was the best process and you'll feel confident doing the job then. He said, we've interviewed quite a few people, and what he said, big names in this sort of field. And now we're going with you. So now you'll be able to feel confident going forward, rather than you just like I sort of got the job at Northern Ireland, falling into it because of who I know. So he was right from that aspect.
So you're in an environment where Jurgen Klopp was, well, we know what he's done, and I'm a Liverpool fan. So I got to see a picture of you on the flight home with the European Cup. I mean, unbelievable. Just tell us what it's like being around those players, the Jordan Hendersons of this world, and Salahs of this world, and the Manes, their professionalism, what they're like, and whenever you were building up a rapport with those guys, I presume trust was at the heart of it, and how difficult is it to get the trust of these players who I am sure probably a bit like yourself had an ego.
Yeah, and listen, they should never apologise for having an ego, because I sort of think they need an ego, because if you've got 50,000 people at an away ground shouting at you and calling you all the names of the day, you've got to be thick-skinned enough to get away with that. So you're saying, how difficult was it to build up a rapport with them? Actually very difficult to get close to a footballer, especially the more experienced one, can be quite difficult, because they've got these barriers up, they've got these walls up. They don't want to let people have a go at them, or they don't want to, they're accustomed to getting quite a lot of criticism, even the best players, they do it. So building up a rapport was difficult. I think what helped was that, I was saying to you that I don't get nervous until my first game. I still remember my first game was an FA Cup match against Bournemouth, and Bournemouth were a championship side. And I'm not breaking medical confidentiality here, because Stephen Gerrard wrote about this in his book. But before we had the chapter of Stephen Gerrard's book, we had Martin Skirtle was playing in defence at the time, and he got kicked on his head. And I say my first game, and I think I did all the concussion tests. He wasn't concussed, and Liverpool were under the cosh at the time. Bournemouth were on the ascendancy. It was 0-0. And I thought, I've got to get him back on here, but he's got a big wound and blood everywhere. So got a staple gun out and just stapled his head and said, "On you go." And I remember finishing the game and looking at my phone, and there were like a load of text messages saying, "Oh my God, what have you just done?" From all my mates. And apparently the TV cameras it was a televised match, had just zoomed in as soon as I was stapling. So I'm like, I hope this doesn't look bad on TV. So straight away went over to Martin and went over to Skirtle and like, "You okay?" He's like, yeah, I'm fine. So that was all okay until we were walking out and he was being interviewed, and I'd taken the staples out after the match, and I'd stitched his head because you get a better cosmetic appearance then. And he had a shaved head, so we needed to try and get as small a scar as possible. And I'm thinking, okay, Martin's on my side. I'm okay. I haven't done anything dangerous, haven't done anything bad. We've got away with this. And I was literally walking past Martin as he was being interviewed, and the commentator or the girl interviewing him was sort of saying to him, "Oh, Martin, pretty much saying you're such a hard man, well done for doing that." And Martin's exact words were, "I would not have done it if I hadn't known how effing sore it was." so that was all okay. And then you say, the same game as Stevie Gerrard put this in his book, was whenever he got a cut and got a laceration on a place you don't want to get a laceration on. And he'd come up to me at the end of the match and says, "Doc, I think you're going to have a look at this." And I looked down, saw blood everywhere. I thought, wow, that must be really, really sore. But trying to think back to my medical training, nowhere in my medical training does it teach you how to stitch a penis. I'm like, what to do? I don't want the first penis I'm ever stitching to be Steven Gerrard's, but yeah, it was. That sort of helped a little bit with breaking the ice and getting to, I guess the players sort of accepted me a little bit then. Obviously, that wasn't the same with all the players. It takes a little bit to build a rapport with them. And I say the thing I always stick to is not to be matesy with them. I don't want to be going out for dinner with them or going out for a drink with them. I would never do that. And likewise, I wouldn't, go up, call everyone by their first name. So I'm not going up and calling Skirtle skirts, or not going up and calling Hendo. It's try to call them by their first name, hope that they sort of see why I do that, and then never give them any preferential treatment. So if we've got a youngster coming into the first team and they're in the medical office, I'm not going to kick him out because Jordan Henderson wants to come in. And I hope they respect me a little bit. I'll use the example of Trent Alexander-Arnold. He was coming up. I remember him being in the treatment room, one of the senior pros coming in and making a bit of a joke of it, saying, "Get him out." I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. One, because it's disrespectful, and two, I have no idea how good Trent's going to be in the next 3-4 years. He's had a meteoric rise, and I don't want him turning around in 3 or 4 years' time and saying, "Oh, that doctor, all he ever wanted to do was treat the best players." And you see that a lot in football, especially in my role, the doctors or the physios, they'll buddy up to the big name player, and that that grates on me. I hate seeing that.
I know you're a professional, right? To the core. I can sense it from what I know of you, but from how you go about your business and how you're speaking to me right now. But did you ever have a fanboy moment? Like, you are a footballer at the end. Don't get me wrong, there's so many footballers I look up to, but whenever you were dealing with people of the caliber of Steven Gerrard and whatnot, did you ever have a fanboy moment where you're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this"? Or is that just really daft and probably profession you can't say that?
No, not so much. No, I can't say it. I can tell you a story about it. Not so much with Liverpool because, again, my missus keeps me grounded, and she's always like, "God, I'm old enough to be all their mothers," and it's true. As much as whenever I started with the international team, there were guys towards the end of their career who were about my age. With the Liverpool team, the oldest player is still 10 years younger than me, so I don't have that much of a fanboy. What I did have was, we were playing, it was for Northern Ireland, and we were playing away to Portugal, and we drew 1-1 with them. I can't remember which campaign it was, but it was a competitive match. We drew 1-1 with them. Niall McGinn scored, but at the end of the match, I was standing outside with Gareth McCauley, Aaron Hughes, a couple of the older boys. Anyway, Northern Ireland. With Liverpool, you have the players wear a different tracksuit to the staff, say. So the players will have a red tracksuit, staff have grey tracksuit. So whenever you're travelling, you can differentiate. But with Northern Ireland, we didn't have that much money, so everybody wore the same tracksuits. So we're standing outside the change rooms. So we've just drawn 1-1 with Portugal. I think we ruined their qualification a little bit. But Ronaldo came out and, shook Gareth McCauley's hand. Well played. Shook Aaron Hughes' hand. Well played. And I'm standing there and he shook my hand. So well played. And that's the only fanboy moment I had because I didn't have the heart to tell him I didn't play. I sort of accepted. I said, yeah, thanks. A hard match, that.
So you did obviously the run to win the Champions League. Disappointment in the league. Around the team at that particular time, I mean, listen, being European Cup winners was just amazing, but not winning the league. How much hurt was there in the team that didn't happen and didn't get over the line?
A lot. There were sort of two schools of thought. One was, yeah, it was horrible, but Man City had done so well to accumulate so many points. And we went on one hell of a run at the end of the season. So it shows you how much of a run they went on as well. On the other side of it was, listen, next year we can give them another good run. Personally, I'm always thinking, what could have been? And we lost the league by 2 points. How could we have made those 2 points up? Is there anything we could have done from a medical point of view that could have got one of the players back quicker, and instead of drawing a match we could have won? So I would like to sort of go back and reflect a little bit and see what we have tweaked, what we have changed. Yeah, it was crap not winning the league and getting so many points, but listen, Man City got so many points, so what were they doing that we should have done instead? So I don't know if that's the right way to look at it as such. I sort of still look at it, great winning the Champions League, but how much better would that have been if we had won the Champions League and the Premier League?
If you don't mind me asking, just a quick question about Jurgen Klopp. I mean, even Manchester United fans find it difficult not to like the gentleman. I mean, he is...
They should try working with him.
He's passionate. He knows what he's talking about, and he gets the best out of the players. That's what it looks like from an outsider looking in. All right?
Yeah.
Whenever you're so close to what's going on there, how incredible is he to work with, and how does he make it just all tick?
How does he make it tick? I have no idea. How incredible is he to work with? It's you only need to spend about 10 minutes in his company to understand not how charismatic he is, but how brilliant he is at talking to people. So there's the Jurgen that you see on the sidelines during the matches, where he's just for 90 minutes he's a beast, but he does that on purpose, and he uses the expression, I shout and I scream and I you see the veins coming out of his neck, and he says that's to give you a kick up the backside to the players, and they sort of respond to that a little bit. The 90 minutes during the match were the hardest times to work with him. And there have been a couple of times during the matches where, or the day following the matches, and I would have said to, say we needed to bring a player off, I'd say to him, and he'd be like, are you crazy? And shout at you. And then the next day he'd be like, well, no, that's just because that's the focus I get for the match. I don't mean it, it's not personal. And it took me about a year and a half working with him to realize that. And he's an incredible character. He's going to be one of those people that everyone asks, what was it like to work with Jurgen? And honestly, the best example I could give him about him is that he could join in a conversation with you, and because he's so good at talking to people, he's so good at telling the players what they need to be doing. And if you think Liverpool had, even last year, had the 11 best players, I don't think they had, but they just worked so good as a team. And if one little bit of that team doesn't fit in, the whole system breaks down, and he knows that, and that's why he's like the way he is on the sidelines. He's just not so much. I don't want to use the word charismatic. He's captivating.
You talk about him shouting or whatever and giving the players a kick up the backside. Did they ever have to give you a kick up the backside?
No, I wouldn't say a kick up the backside at all. There was a couple of times that he would have shouted at me, and there was a couple of times whenever we first started that I would tell him something he didn't like. It's like I was saying, you'd have to tell him something in a different way than what you would have had to have said to Brendan Rodgers. And you would say to Jurgen, and he would come back with a load of questions to you. And sometimes you'd be thinking, he's doubting me. He doesn't respect my opinion, blah, blah. And it wasn't, it took me a little while to realize, actually, no, he's a perfectionist. I've got to have the answer to those questions he's about to ask me. I've got to have them ready for him, for whenever he asks them. And it not so much made me up my game. It just made me become more of a perfectionist, sort of like him, if that makes sense. So any of the times he would have shouted, I remember once he shouted at me, one of the players, he hated seeing players going down on the ground. You watch Liverpool, very rarely would I need to run onto a pitch. And if I run onto a pitch, they're hurt. So other teams, they'll have players and they'll roll about the ground, and the doctor and the physio run on, pour a bit of water on, they'll get up and run about. He hated that. He was like, what good is water going to do? And I agree with him. So he had that instilled into the players. If you're hurt, get up, start running. And if you can't carry on, we'll sub you. That was the mentality. But I think it was the first season, one of our players went down. I won't say who it was, but the opposing team went on and scored a goal, and he's effing and blinding across the pitch, and this player's down. I thought, I've got to run on here. And it wasn't long after Eva Pinheiro got sacked at Chelsea because Jose Mourinho and that. So I'm like, should I go on? I'm not sure. I have to go on. Anyway, went on. Came back off again, and the physio stayed on the other side then to make sure that this player was okay. And I came back, and Jurgen was like, ask him, is he all right? And he's screaming at me, and I'm looking, there's like 15,000 people in this new stand that we've built. I thought, they can all see him shouting at me. So anyway, the next day I went to him, and it's like, did you have to shout at me in front? It made me look stupid. He's like, no, I wasn't shouting at you, I was shouting over at the physio. And I'm like, no, you weren't, you were looking at me. He said, yes, but you had the earphones on. I was shouting so he would see it. And I'm like, Jurgen, I have to press a button for him to hear it. And he was like, oh, okay. So he get carried away in the moment, but that's him. That side of him is also the same side that sees him running onto the pitch and celebrating with the players. And you wouldn't change that.
Whenever you left Liverpool to go to the job that you're in now, I read a tweet that you put out, something along the lines of, you had the best time ever at a club that you grew to love. All right, which makes me ask the question: growing up as a boy, who you thought?
Everton.
So going to Liverpool then. Going to Liverpool, how difficult was that to accept that job?
No, it wasn't that difficult to say, because I wouldn't get fan struck like that. But there's a good photograph my parents thankfully haven't released yet, and I can talk about it now. The first ever trip, we didn't have lots of money whenever we were young, but I remember, I think it was my last year of primary school, my dad took me over to see an Everton match, and I had an older brother, so he was a Liverpool supporter, hence we fought the bit out. I was always going to support Everton then. So we were going over to watch Everton against Spurs. I think I was about 9, 10. First time I'd ever been on a plane, and we flew in. But because we were going to watch the Everton match, my dad thought, well, we'll go to Anfield to, as a treat for his other boy. And it was before the days of the corporate stuff, so we're talking like, it was the last time Liverpool won the league, whatever year that was. So they had tours and everything, but I don't think they were as big as what the stadium tours were like now. So we go up to the desk, and my dad blagged. He said, are there any tours? And the girl was behind the desk saying, no, they've just finished. So he turned around and played the sympathy card. So my brother's called Christopher. He was like, oh, Chris, sorry. And he was like, oh, what's his name? And my dad says, Chris. She says, oh. And the girl was like, I still remember her name to this day. She was like, my name's Chris. He's like, oh, okay. So her name was Chris Moss, right? My brother's name, Chris Massey. And we just had about 10 minutes laughing. Those are the worst names ever around December time, Chris Moss and Chris Massey. So she took pity on us, and she said, look, there are no tours, but come on, I'll show you around. So she showed us around, brought us up to the trophy cabinet, which was out of bounds to the normal tour. Opened up the cabinet, and of course I'm there getting ready to go to watch Everton the next day, so I'm blued up to the nines. But before we went in, my dad was like, zip your coat up, don't let anyone see that Everton top you're wearing. And I had a scarf on, so it zipped up to about here, and I'm inside in the trophy cabinet, and the sweat's pouring out of me. And this girl, Chris Moss, says, do you want a photograph of the two boys and the league trophy? She's like, yeah, no problem. So we're standing beside League Trophy, and she comes up and starts to undo my zips. Says, oh, take your coat off. So unzips it, and I've got Everton all over me. And she's like, oh, that'll make one hell of a photograph, that will. Yeah, so I supported Everton growing up.
Brilliant. Really, really, really good. Whenever this job came up at FIFA, did they approach you? You go for it? You apply for it? What way does that work? Because now you're at the top. Like, I don't need to tell you this. You know this. You're at the top of your profession now. Do they come to you, or do you still have to go through the process?
No, went through the process with this one, with the way FIFA were, with their history over the last 6-7 years, everything is by the book with them. They they have to be so transparent. So I don't think they approach anybody for jobs. I'd seen it advertised, and I sort of thought, not that I didn't enjoy the Liverpool job as much, but I had 3 young kids and I'd never taken them to a football match. They went to the Liverpool matches and they got some, they went to both Champions League finals. So they got some great opportunities, but I never got to share it with them. So never had a chance, never had a weekend to spend with them. And I just sort of thought, I'm missing out a little bit here. I wonder, the FIFA job will give me my weekends off. I'm busting to go to a Liverpool match to bring my boys, or an Everton match, or any match. I don't care. I want to go to a football, I'll go to a Bangor match. I don't care. I want to take my boys to a football match and get that sort of thing going with them again. So yeah. So the FIFA job is advertised. They hadn't had anybody in this, but this is a new position for them. So a bit of a learning process on both sides. Got the person that I report into, great fella. So he was sort of like, yeah, we'll got your ideas, he's got his ideas, we'll put them together and we'll see how we can make FIFA a bit of a medical thing. So yeah, sort of learning as I go along here.
And in terms of your family right now, I mean, you're sitting speaking to me now and you're in Zurich, but where are the family based and what way does it work for you? Can you set up anywhere?
Yeah, not really. Since the COVID, so I started at FIFA at the start of March. I had 2 weeks in the job, and then the coronavirus happened, and I've been in lockdown pretty much in the UK since then. So this is the first week that I've come back to Zurich. So the idea was that I would commute Monday to Thursday with FIFA, Friday, Saturday, Sunday back in Liverpool. I'd already asked my wife to give up her career to come over to Liverpool. She's by far, so she does the same sort of job as me. She's by far a better doctor than me, 100% better doctor than me. She's the person that I always ask for advice. And she's still working at Liverpool. So I find it difficult to ask her to give all that up to come out here just so that I can have weekends with the kids. So at the moment, well, whenever coronavirus finishes, I'll be commuting. We'll see how that goes. My oldest boy's 11, so I'm not keen on moving the kids out here just yet. Want to see how it goes. And, the first 2 weeks was brilliant because I saw more of my kids in those 2 weeks working in a different country than I did in 7 years working at Liverpool.
Director of FIFA's medical department, what are you hoping that you can change, or what impact are you hoping that you can have on the game right across the world?
Good question. I sort of see it more as a bit of a blank canvas. So I love working in the professional elite side of things, but FIFA's remit is to go wider than that. It's not just the Premier League. It's football right down to under whatever age in whatever country you want to talk about. So some of the big things we've got. Big things that we want to address straight away, what I call the emergency things. So sudden cardiac death in football, the concussion issue in football, players having to retire early because of osteoarthritis. Those are the things that make the headlines and at the moment are the big sort of medical topics. But, you look at what sort of a role football can have on actual humanity in itself. Can we get equal rights for girls to play football in lots of countries in the world where they're not allowed to play football? Can we, use physical activity or use football as a way to increase physical activity in countries that just don't have the infrastructure, the grassroots that more of the developed countries have? Can we, use football to try and promote a better type of life for anyone in any sort of sphere in football? So yeah, there's the bits that will always get the headlines, but there's also the bits that actually make the difference. So we've got a couple of studies that we're doing looking at women's football to see if we can use that to try and increase the equality and the physical health of people. But even this coronavirus, it's affecting everyone. It's not just affecting the Premier League football. So can our guidance try and help the under 11 leagues in Northern Ireland who are still not able to play football and sort of have a more wide ranging approach to it?
It sounds to me like you love a challenge. Because you're very passionate. Whenever you're talking about all these issues, you can just, I can feel and I can hear your passion. Yeah,
a little bit. I suppose so. It's more the fact that nobody's really done this before. So yeah, it hit home with me my first week at FIFA. I went round to meet everybody, And then the first phone call I got is from the World Health Organization saying, can you come on to an expert group about something or other? I'm like, wow, okay, yes. Now we can make a bit of a change. I've gone from that little bubble that Liverpool were in, and rightly so, that's what you got to do, little bubble of maybe 30 players where you're on call 24/7 to, potentially, 4 or 5 billion people who will all have kicked a football at some stage in their life. It's different. And I guess I'm going to miss I tell people I'm not really that clinical anymore. I'm wearing a shirt and tie for the first time in 7 years. And I'm not really going to be treating that many people, but hopefully getting policies and procedures in place that make people healthier.
Your journey's been incredible so far. Would you do anything different if you had the opportunity to do it again?
Yeah, I probably would have stayed a physio, if I'm being honest. I don't know. I think this is the big one. I've been really, really lucky with the jobs in my professional lifestyle. So take the playing football. I've done a whole lot of things different playing. But from a professional point of view, no, I've been so lucky to work with in every job that I've really, really liked. And every time I've moved, I've always had that sort of trepidation about, it's not going to be as good, or, I'm making a mistake here. So maybe if you ask me again in 6 months' time, I'll tell you what FIFA is really like. Hopefully I'll be saying, yeah, good move, I'm happy with it.
I'm hoping anyone who's listening to this right now will take a lot of things away from what you've had to say. So for me, number one, your passion. Number two, you've always set the bar really high in terms of where you've wanted to go. Yeah, you've had a bit of an ego, but you've always wanted to prove other people wrong. If you were to go back and go back to your 18-year-old self and give yourself some advice from all this knowledge that you've gleaned through your career, what would you say to yourself, 22 years ago?
Yeah, I think exactly that. Don't have an ego. Try and help people as much as you can. Football is such a small community, so you're always going to meet people who you've either played with or played for, and I'm even doing that now. There's people working in FIFA from Northern Ireland. I'm like, you meet them again. So it took me until early 20s to realize that football is all about opinions. It's not a 100-meter race. The best sprinter doesn't always get picked. It's about opinions, and people have different opinions. Who you think is the best footballer is different to I think. And my younger self would have thought, nah, they're wrong. I don't like them because they don't think I'm any good a footballer. Now I sort of think, well, yeah, actually they were right. So yeah, it's just hate the idea of falling out with anybody. Hate the idea of people having egos. I hate the idea of people thinking that I've got an ego now. It's just more just take things as they come.
We're recording this before the Premier League resumes following COVID-19. A couple of matches, Liverpool get it over the line and win the league. Will you still have a place at the party?
I hope so. I'm not sure, actually. I hope so. As I say, my wife still works there, so I'm hoping to be her +1. But I don't know whether whether I'll get invited or whether she'll kick me out. Both are equally as likely. We hope so. But that was probably, you're talking about a fanboy moment earlier on. I actually forgot all about that. That parade, whenever we won the Champions League, the parade through Liverpool on the open top bus was just unbelievable. And I remember beforehand being so tired, just so relieved that they'd won it, being so tired. And again, not really getting into if you watch back any of the footage, whenever Liverpool score, I deliberately don't jump up and down and cheer because I don't want any of the players to say, what's he doing? He's only a doctor. So, I deliberately sat in the one spot beside a physio who was a miserable outside. He sat beside me and the two of us didn't cheer. But we knew we were going on this open top bus, and I was like, nah, it's not me. I can't do it. I don't want to be swept up in this. And the kit man who'd been there for years and years, a good friend of mine, said, listen, I was on the last one in 2005. He said, you've got to go on it. It's life defining. And I'm like, yeah, is it heck? And it wasn't until about 10 minutes into this, I'm like, wow. So that's probably the thing that I would miss most. Not so much winning the league. I don't want, medals are for people who fight in wars and stuff like that. That's probably the one thing that I'll miss, and maybe the one time I'll regret. I'm not actually on that bus. But I've got 3 kids who all support Liverpool, so I'll be in the support somewhere.
Absolutely. Andy, do you know what? I've really enjoyed hearing about your journey. It's been an incredible one to date. You're 40 years of age?
Yeah, I'm 41. 41, yeah. 41.
Okay. There's still so much more to be written, and I just want to personally wish you all the success in the world of FIFA, and hopefully you can make a big difference you know, right from grassroots to elite level football right across the world. And thanks so much for speaking to us, and thanks for being so open and honest.
Not a problem. It's great fun. Thanks for asking me.